Hello all. Today we are going to take a look at how to perform CRUD operations using Angular. So for this tutorial we are using Angular version 7, Bootstrap 4 and Font Awesome. This tutorial will help you understand modularized development in Angular, developing forms using the reactive forms and perform user input validations and develop components, how to develop services and use routing for navigations. Before jump into the actual development, let's have a quick demo of the application that we are going to develop. Here is our application that lists a set of products and provides options to add new product and view product, delete product, and from view it will allow us to edit and update the product. So let's add a new product called test1, code being test1, categories any category, and unit can be pieces, carton or anything, and purchase rate being 100, sales rate being 120, and save it. You can see that product being added. So let's take this product and update it. So we got the product into the view mode and click on edit button and update the product price, and we make it purchase rate being 120 and sales rate being 200 and save it back. So now you can see that product rate being updated. So similarly we can remove the product. Say I wish to remove this product, click on the delete button. So we got it deleted. So this is pretty much this application. So it performs listing, viewing, editing, deleting and adding new products. So first we will create a new app called new new app CRUD operations, new app CRUD operations, and also we can have the routing enabled as we create the application. So I'm giving that routing switch. This is possible only in Angular 7, and so once we hit on enter, we will see the prompt to choose the styling technique. So I'm selecting CSS itself and got it selected, and we'll wait for the app to be created. It will take a couple of minutes to get the app created. Almost got created. So let's see again. It's taking a couple of minutes more. Yeah, this is got app got created now. So we can open our application. Let's open it. So we have got the default app module, and you can see that routing module being created, and there is no routes being added yet. There is a prompt. Okay. So let's see the default Angular styles. We can see HTML styles and the icon. So I'll just let's before removing that, I'll add the Bootstrap CSS and other dependencies. So npm install save it. So this command npm install save, it is not necessary basically to specify this is a dev dependency or app dependency. We are using that, and ng bootstrap slash ng bootstrap is for the Angular Bootstrap components, and Bootstrap is for the CSS, and Font Awesome is for the Font Awesome icons, font icons. It's a lightweight icons that we can make use of for the web application developments. Let's install that. Let me see what is the problem with it. npm install --save ng bootstrap /ng bootstrap. We have a spelling mistake here. Bootstrap. Let's hit. So now we have got the bootstrap components, bootstrap and font awesome got installed. Now let's take a look at how to set up that CSS. So for that all we need to do is to have two commands to import statements into the style.css. So these are the two statements that will get the CSS, bootstrap CSS and font awesome CSS configured to our application. So now we have got these styles got reflected here. Then let's we also remove this default HTML and we'll get the bootstrap navbar be added to our application so that our app component will be looking like the dashboard of the application. So let's add the navbar. I am making a small customization to the default navbar, adding an angular icon, fav icon came along with this default app that I am using, and also I have added a different background color to the navbar. So now let's see how is our changes got added to the default Angular application in this. So main changes we have made to the application are the package.json. There we will see the bootstraps and font awesome components got added to the application. Also you can see that it's been added to project dependencies, and this can be made to dev dependencies as well. And we can specify -save -dev, which can be used for that purpose. And we modified the style.css here, and also we have modified the default app component HTML with these header. So now our application's dashboard would look like this. So next thing we're going to do in this tutorial is to create a new module where we can write all our classes, services, components required for these CRUD operations. And the module name is product. We are going to manage or do the CRUD operations for the products in this tutorial. So let's create the product module. I'm enabling routing by default by giving the switch over here. Let's hit enter. We can see the product module got created. So the routing module specific to this product module and the module file. So Now let's create a couple of classes that are required for this CRUD operation. So I create a models folder within the product module and generate class product slash models slash lookup. So this would create the lookup class, and then we have the product class. So we have got both lookup class and product classes got created. Now we have to define the properties that is required for those name, that can be a string, and code that can also be a string, and then we have category. So category can be a number, will be used to categorize the lookups. We will be having units and um, product category as of a type lookup. So we will be using the lookup class for that. And then next thing we have is the product class. So product class, we will be having the name, code, all the details that is required for this class. Prior to that, we will define an interface of called product. One second, export interface I product, and I'm defining this interface I product because this can be used to specify the type, enforce the type for within these method signatures, and the yeah, that is the main purpose that you can see in Angular TypeScript classes in any of the tutorials on the internet. So now we can have our product class implements this I product, and we can use this default. Clicking on that bulb will get this I product automatically implemented within our product class. I also will define a constructor for this class. So let's define that constructor class. Here all the parameters I have given as of nullable type for now. We can enforce even certain parameters here to be mandatory by avoiding the nullable. And now we have the classes got created. Let's save that and close all those things, and now we have to define the services that is required to perform the CRUD operations. Actually, we am defining only Angular services for now in this tutorial, because um, these services will be able to simulate actual RESTful service hit that to retrieve the data from the database. Within the services folder, we can have these services got created by using the generate commands service, ng generate service product slash services slash product service. First service we are creating is product service, and then once product service get created, we go for the lookup service, and this service will be responsible to supply all the lookup data, and product service will be responsible for all the uh, functions, CRUD operation functions. So let's define the lookup services now. So we have a singleton service that's now got created. We have to add couple of things into the lookup service. So I have a predefined set of measurements, and units and category JSONs with me. So let me add that to this. So now you can see that the data is actually within this lookup service. Once get initialized, this can be accessed and also be modified. So Now, the lookup data are master data that we will not be modifying. We will be doing only product modifications or retrievals and all those actions. And lookups will only be retrieved for the product component. So we can add couple of methods to this lookup service that we will be able to retrieve the lookup data as and when required. So get product categories, and it is returning a type observable or lookup array, and this off operator is used to convert a static JSON array into observable. So basically, when we have some RESTful services that pull data from the database will be consumed from within these methods. So I am avoiding that because of the time constraints. Instead, I will simulate the actual service response using this observable here, and we will consume these services from our components. So now let's define the product service. So now to define the product service, we will add a static set of data, product data first. So like I said, I have some data with me, and let me add that. So this would be the uh, data that we will be having in this product service, and like we did for the lookup service, we will also add some of functions that are required for the CRUD operations. So we have the required methods, and we will also import the types that is required for the. So now we have all the methods required for the CRUD operations: get all products, get all product by ID, add new product, and delete product. So now let's save all these things. So now we have the services and the required classes being created, and we are good to create the components now. So let's first create the listing component, product listing component. For that we use the generate command again, generate component product slash list. So we got now the list component being created with the default HTML and the component class. So let's define the products property here. Uh, products is of type observable I product, and initialize it to be null. So this, let's import this I product type, and now we need to have our services injected here. So now for listing purpose we only needed the product service. So let's define product service. We got the product service created and initialize our products. So we have retrieved all our we have got our products property of the list component being initialized using the service product, and retrieved all the products out of it. So for now this list component, this is sufficient. We can code and design our component. So before we move on with designing our component, we will just wire it up with the dashboard. So let's first define the route that we can retrieve this component. So let's define this to be a default component that we can load anytime when the product, by default when the product module is loaded. So list component is defined being a default component of the product module, and we need our product module to be loaded whenever we have um, a default when the application is loaded by default. So for that we will add this route within the app routing module. What it does is, by default, when there is no path specified, it will redirect to products path, and the products path will load uh, the product module. So this is how the modules will be loaded. So once this module loaded, it will also be loading the list component by default, and it will be um, the default one. So let's now take a look at how does this work. It will take a couple of minutes to get this built and run. So now the product component loaded by default, and also you can see the route here by default is products. Since it is products, we will get the product module be loaded by default. So now let's go back and continue designing the list component. So now we have the list default HTML here. We will remove that with our own HTML. So I have given a heading products. Now we can define the table that can list the products. For that we will go to Bootstrap and get the tables styles from there. I would go for a simple table. I am copying this table here from here, and just seeing how this table looks in our application. Looks nice. So now let's go back and modify this table to list the products. So let's remove these things with replace this with our product properties. So we would need name instead of first, last, and all. We will be having name, code, unit, category, sales rate, purchase rate as our heading. So this will be our heading for the products listing table. So again here what we need to do is we need to remove this static rows. Instead we have to add a dynamic row where we need to use ng4 here and bind our products. So let's products of products we get bind to our rows, and also we will replace I mean cell data with our product properties. So here we can add product dot name, and similarly we can have the remaining properties of the product added here. Let me add that very real quick. So we got the product name, code, category name. So we need to flip this since we have given unit as first and category second, and here again sales rate and purchase rate, that we will again flip. So now we have these properties added, and we'll take a look at now the products is not listing. So I think I got the problem. So here the products that we have bound to the HTML is a type of observable, so we would need the async pipe to be used here. So we got the async pipe added, we got the product listing. We have the serial number column wrongly mapped to the name column, so we would need the serial number be printing here. We can print the ID of the product instead of serial number. So now we have got the product listing component done, and by default whenever we launch the application we can see products is getting listed by default. Now next thing in this tutorial is to add the add component, that we can add new products into the list. So for that we are going to create a new add component within this product module. So ng generate component product slash add will create a component called add within the product module. So now we have got the add component got added to the product module. So we have the default add works HTML, the label within it. So we also would need this add component to be linked or accessible from the products listing screen, the default landing screen of the product module. So for that what we are going to do is to add a route link in the product listings component. So let's go to listing component, and here we have the listing component. Let's add a row within it, small column we have added. So now within that we will write a anchor tag, and we will name it as add new. So this will be used to navigate to the add screen. So for that we need to add a router link router for the add module, add component. So let's let's define the add component here. I mean add components routing here. Path, when path path is matched the add, then we will load the component add component. So that's it. So now what we can do is, in this list component, let's define a router link. Router link will be used for specifying the route. Router link equal to add. So our router link matches a route named add within the route module, that this should navigate to add component. We can see how is it working. So now we have the add link here. When clicking on it, it goes to the add component. So product slash add. So now we will design the add component that we can add new products into the list. So let's go back, close these things and open up the add component. So first thing in the add component that we will need is the form. We need to define, we are going to use reactive forms for the uh, forms development in this case. Prior to that, we would need a couple of things to be added to the products module for the reactive forms to work. So that we need to import some forms modules into our product module that will enable us design the forms development. So for that we have added the reactive forms module and the forms modules from Angular forms namespace. So we have got both of them got added now, and let's go to the add component, and within the add component we have to inject the uh, form builder class for us to uh, create the forms. So let's first inject the forms builder class, and we will define our forms here. So here the product form is what we are naming the form. The product form is of type uh, when we will initialize this, product form as a form group, this dot fb dot, we will pass a empty object into it, and we will initialize that with as a form group object. And within the ng init class we can add the controls that we require into the form. So let's this dot product form dot add control, we can add a control called id. This may not be displayed in the screen, that I will show you how can we display it. Form control will take couple of parameters. You can see it be displaying form state, validators, options, validation functions, arrays, many things. So we are now passing empty state, and validators being only required validators. We are not defining any complex validators over here. So id is something required property that we, for now id is actually required property we are defining here for now. We will change it later. And now we have the name property, and we also have code. All of the rest of the property I am defining here, setting as mandatory. Unit is a mandatory, and category 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 is a mandatory, and we have sales rate, purchase rate, all got added. Now we have our forms been defined. um, so now we will go and design our HTML and bind these things to our forms HTML. So first thing, like other components, we will define a heading for this. So here we define add product as the header, and next thing we have to have is a form component we have to define. In this form component we are defining or binding the form group property of reactive form uh, to be set as our product form that we have defined behind for the code behind here, the product form, and within that we will design how our UI need to look like. So we will be using the bootstrap form styles for designing our UI. So I wish to use a simple UI somewhat like this, and for that I'll copy this form group elements that is defined here and I will place it in our code. I don't need this uh, email component here. Instead I will be making use of something similar to the password input box. So now this is not a password, so we will change it to as a name and input type being text, and the ID we will remove for now. Placeholder we won't need. Placeholder if you need you can keep it. For now I am removing the placeholder and I am just adding the uh, reactive form property form control name. From control name I am specifying that to be name, the exact same name that we have given here, that I am binding to this particular element. So in order to uh, make this add component section to be stand out from the other areas of the screen, I am adding another div with a class jumbotron slash div jumbotron. This will make this particular section being highlighted and middle aligned to the within the web page. Let's take a look at that. See, you can see that names added and it been aligned to center of the screen. Here add product we will trap within a h4 tag, so it will look to be a heading. So now we have the name component being added and we can have the other component also be added. So for that we will put a space in between. We can have the other components added: code, unit, category, sales rate, purchase rate. These are the components that we are going to add. So now let's come back and rename those fields: code, unit, unit, sales rate, I forgot category. Let me add category as well. Category, category. So now we will take a look at how is our UI looks like. So we got all the components added. Basically here this unit and categories are lookups that we need to bind to. First thing we're going to do is let's define two more properties of type array observable array types, the units and uh, category. So for that we are actually defining units being an observable lookup array, and category as well as lookup array, and we would need that be bound here. For that we need to inject our next service here, that is private private lookup service. So we got the lookup service injected, and we can bind assign the units is this dot lookup service dot get units. So this will return an observable types of units. Similarly, this dot categories equal to this dot lookup service dot get product categories. So we got both lookup service, I mean the categories and units being loaded to our component. Now we can modify these two uh, types here, I mean fields here. So categories, we need to use a select box. Both category and units. So now let's bind the unit first. So I'm just changing this input with a selector select type that you can see here. I am using a select control and binding that to unit, and like we have bound our product in the product listing, we are using async pipe to subscribe for this units observable, I mean data from the units observable, and binding the value to unit code, and display text being the name. Similarly, we will also be changing the category. So let's take the category for this. Uh, so now the control category is also been bound. Now something wrong here. Let's see what is causing the problem. Cannot find module crypto. So now that was unexpectedly got added to this class. I just removed it. Now it is working fine. So now you can see that our lookups got added properly, and in the UI. We have this. We can add anything in this. So let's add some couple of action buttons to this. So we have we are adding some buttons required for this um, form. We have the save button, save, continue and cancel buttons, and we can see now the button started displaying here. So now let's go back and define these functions within our component. So let's go back, and we want to define this save function. Wait, and we have the save functions. It is a mock function now, and similarly we have save and continue function. So let's go back and define this save and continue function. The save and continue function, and the cancel will by default go to the products, router link products being added. So now even you can see it being working. Clicking on cancel goes back to the listing screen. Add new will launch this add product screen. So save and save continue. For now, do not do anything. We did not define anything within it. So now basically we go back to the add component and define the save functions. First thing, save and continue. Save and continue. Both will do the same functions, but but the one will do keep allow user to keep add the products. So say product, basically what it does is it will retrieve the selected or user, I mean the whatever data user has given as input into the uh, product form. We can access our product form here, that we can read our products. So first thing, save functionality, we are going to add another private function, private save product. uh, what it will do is we can define a constant product equal to new product, and within this product we will assign value that is given input as input from the UI. So product dot id equal to this dot product form dot get id dot value. So this is possible only when we are using the reactive form. Since our the form bound to the UI is accessible from the code, and we can also view the data that user has given as input. So now we have taken the product form dot id value. If we are viewing a product that is already existing, this will be having a value, otherwise it will not be having value. So here this validator we can remove for now, but ideally whenever a product that has been created will be having the id. So similar to the product id, we can also map the name that user has given as an input. So remaining properties again, we have to get it in such a way, such same way, so in the code. And the only exemption here is the another object we have is the lookup object. To read the lookup objects, we need to define another function where we will pass the code that we will be able to get from the form, and we will get form the complete lookup object and assign that to the product, and will get added to the database. Basically we will pass it to our Angular service. So this is how I do for the lookup objects. So the product form, I will get the category dot value will be actually returning the lookup code, and that we will pass to the method that will retrieve the complete lookup object and return back that we can assign to category. Similarly, we will be having the unit. So unit, and we have the two remaining properties of the product that are purchase rate and sales rate. Now we have got the product objective assigned back from our uh, form. So now we will actually we will be we can call the list dot product. Okay, we haven't injected the product service, so let's go back and inject the product service here. Private product service of type product service. So now we have the product service got injected. This dot product service dot add new product. We can pass the product into it. So this should save the product whatever newly we are adding. So let's try adding the product. Before we move on that, we will not be having the ID for the product that are newly adding. So that we can for now in the listing component I am modifying the ID from displayed. Instead I would use a different technique to display serial number. So that is like in order to avoid empty data displayed in the row, I just manipulated that in this way. So let's save it now and go back to our screen. Just try entering something here. Select piece, category, sales rate, some data we are entering. Okay, we got name additionally displaying. So we'll correct that first. Add form. Final thing we remove that one and come back again. Let's enter some data. We can just debug this and see what is happening. So let's go back here and product component list add component.ts file. We can go, we can debug and see what is happening over here. Okay, now our button click is not okay. I missed out binding this function to this save product, this function. So let's call the save product from here. So now we have the save product. This dot save product will get called. Now whenever we call the save product, we would need few things to be validated. First thing is we need to check is this product form is valid. If this dot product form dot valid, then only we will make this allow this product to be saved. For that, what we can do is, by default, whenever we hit on the save button, uh, we can do one thing. If this is not valid, we can return it. Okay, otherwise we will do this dot save product will be called. Also, we will be navigating to the product list screen by default. Unless user wanted, we need to add one dependency, the router, that we will be able to uh, navigate back from the code. For that, we will need the router component to be added as an inject within our inject, in the constructor. So we got router added and import router from the router module. So now we have pretty much everything that is needed. Save. If form is invalid, we will return it back. Otherwise, we will save the product and navigate to the products list. Let's take a look at that functionality. See, we got our new product being added in the list as we added. Now remove this debugger, and now let's go back and define the save and continue. Save and continue is again pretty much the same functionality, but instead of navigating away from the screen, we will be staying back in the same screen. Um, so now go back, and this add new button, I'll move on to the right side. We'll just apply a float right uh, CSS so that it will be on the right side. So we got the button appearing in the right side. We can also apply some font awesome classes that it will give a web applications uh, web icon to the uh, add new button, and so add new will be displayed here like this. So clicking on it, we will give a little spacing. There is a small space issue. Let's leave it for now there. So now we have the add form created, and we'll go back to the add form, and we can, so now even empty value if we add, it will be added. I mean, the form will check the errors so that it will fail, so we can have a quick check of that. We can have this debugged from here. Clicking on save, form.valid will be false and it will be returned back, but the user is not knowing even if the form is valid or not. So we would need some validation messages to be displayed here. For that we would need some things to be done. First of all, we would need to know, in order to display the validation messages, whether the form been submitted or not. For that we will be adding one property to the form, that form submit. If clicked, then only we will be displaying that messages. So for that we will also set that in the save button clicks. So whenever a save button is clicked, save or continue buttons clicked, we will set it to true. And then in the add component HTML, we have marked all these properties of the product being mandatory. So we need to know when validation fails, what messages to be displayed. So for that, what we can do is we can add couple of HTML elements here that will check whether the form is submitted, and the product form dot name control has any errors, then we will apply the invalid errors style to this, as well as this section. This HTMLs will start displaying. So if the name control is having required required validation failures, it will display name is required. Similarly, we will be having the code forms. Code is also a required property here, and first thing we will verify these two fields started displaying or not. So save, we can see that validation messages started appearing. Code is required. Now unit is also a required field, so that as well we will add the validation elements. So we have the validation elements for that, and also for the category. Category and sales rate, purchase rate, and sales rate also we will be adding the validation rules. So now we have all these styles, I mean validation messages are added. Now clicking on save will get this validation message displayed wrong place for this sales rate. So we have to add that within the. So now let's take a look at how the validation message. So now this is not in a color red, so we need to add that CSS into our product form. So let's add that CSS to add component dot. So now invalid error CSS will apply the red color on it. So now we have the validations working. So now if we enter name, test code, and unit selected, category selected, sales rate 100, and purchase rate as 200, and then save, we get the product added. So now we have got the product add component got added to our applications. Add is working. Now let's see how to add delete functionality to the component. So now we have products that can be added, and we need to have delete functionality. So for that, what we are going to do is, in the list component we will be add an option to uh, delete the component. So we will add one more heading section with an empty header that we can display the delete button. So now here within the TD, we can add a new button uh, that will be using a font awesome CSS and a button HTML, and the delete product functionality we will define within our uh, list component. So we have the product service already been added here. So the delete product function, we will take the product being displayed here as a parameter and will pass that into this delete function. So this is like returning a void one, this dot product service dot delete product of product. So now we can see our how does our function delete function works. So we'll go back and see our view. There's something wrong in our view. No. So why this button? Okay, let's save this. Now we have the delete button displaying. So delete, we can delete the uh, products that been added. I can add a new product, one new product, code, unit, category, sales rate 100, purchase rate 200, and save it. We got the new product added. I can delete it. See, it got deleted. So now we have implemented the delete functionality. The next functionality we have to implement here is the update functionality. So for that we need to have the ability to view an existing product. So for that we will add a new component, view component, into the uh, product components list. So let's create ng generate component product / view. So now we have this view being added. At the same time we will be viewing a product with an ID, specific ID. So we also need a route to be added to navigate to the view screens. So let's add path as view / ID. ID will be the parameter here, and when we have this path match, and we will load the component, view component. The comma is missing. So we have added the route for view component, and now we have to design the view. The view is actually pretty much same. of what we have the add component. The only thing is, instead of the input controls, we will be using the label controls. So like we were doing, first thing we will define the header, and we have the header for the product view been added, and next thing is we need to have the jumbotron that will be wrapping the complete uh, view component, and within that jumbotron uh, we will actually define the form group that we were having even for the add control. So instead of input types, we will be using the labels, and since the product that we are binding to is an async type, we will be having that async pipe being used here. So before I do that, let me actually show you how to pull the data for this. So first thing we are doing here is we are defining an observable type of property called a product. This would represent the specific product that we would need to view, and we are adding the required namespaces to have this working, and at the same time we also be adding couple of um, uh, dependencies like product service, and product service is used to pull the product by ID. Oops. So we have the product service added. Next thing we need the Angular routing API activated route, and that we would need to pull the route parameters. And now we will be using, we will retrieve, first thing we're gonna do is we need to retrieve the ID of the product from the route. So for that we will be using the activated route and the some bracket mismatch causing a problem. So now this is correct. Now we have this added, and now we need to have the observable operator switch map to be imported here. So we have switch map. Now we have params dot. So basically I will give you an explanation of this detail. So here we are adding an activated route dependency to read the route parameters, and also the product service be injected to retrieve the products. So first thing we are doing in this init method is to read the parameter and pass it to the product service to get by the ID. So once this is done, we can go to our the view component where we can display the product by name. So since this product is an observable type, we are using async pipe and then retrieving its name, so that it can be displayed. Similarly, we have to do the same for the other properties of the uh, product. Let me import those HTMLs required for that. So we now have all the properties bound to um, the HTML. So now what we need to do is we need some action buttons to be included here, so that we can add that includes the cancel button and the edit buttons. So let me add that too here. So edit functionality we will implement later, but first thing is the buttons display and navigation to that screen. So like we did the list component will be having another button to be added, that to trigger the view. So like we go to the we will add the functionality to trigger, the methods and functions to trigger the view. So now we have found out some CSS given to have a view button decorated, and the view product functionality we will add under the list component. So what we are going to do is we have to take this complete method names and we have to add this over here, and we will make use of the router router. We need to add a router dependency to the view class. So let's add the router as a dependency here, import the namespace for the router. Now we have the view component should be working. So let's take a look at that. Now our product is listing and we have the view buttons appearing on the right side, and try clicking on this view button, we can see the specific product be displayed in the view screen. So route, you can see view/1, and clicking on cancel we'll go back here, view again, cancel it, and add one new new product, unit, sales rate 200. Save that. We got the new product added. Let's view that. Okay, like I said, it is having the ID issue. Since it does not have the ID added, it is not working. So we should be able to view whichever is having an ID with this. So now we need to implement the edit functionality. When we clicking on edit, we need this data to be appearing in the edit mode. Now we are going to implement the edit functionality. So for that we have the edit button added in our view screen, and the functionality was not implemented. Now we will have that implemented within the view function itself. So we will define what should happen when user click on the edit button. So let's define the edit function like what we would need to navigate to add screen, and also we will need to uh, pass this product ID to the add screen, so that the add button add screen can populate the value for this particular uh, product. So now we have the router added. I'm adding the router. So now we got the router in place. Now we do not have this route added already. So what we are doing here is we are pulling the specific product from the product list and navigating to the product screen. Not products list, the product property of this view screen, and we are taking the ID and passing it to the this route, and this route we did not have defined already. So let's define the route within the product route module. So whenever we have an edit route comes, what we need to do is we need to have products view edit. So we will navigate to add component itself. So now when we navigate to add component should be able to retrieve the product ID and product by product ID. So we will add that functionality to the add component. So what we need to do for that is we first need to make use of the activate route and retrieve the product component first thing in the ng init. If there is a um, property, I mean parameter ID within the route. So here is the code. So we are actually retrieving the, so we need to add the router as well as the route activated route as injected here in this class. So let's add that, and we have this param map to be added, and also we have to have the switch map RxJS functionality and operator to be added. So both of those namespaces are modules been added, and now we have the code to read the ID from the URL and pull the product by ID. Once the product is pulled, we need to add the product into the form. So reactive forms provide a easy way to do that. So what we gonna do is once the product is retrieved, we need to subscribe the product details and we need to pass it to the product form. We have the product form within our screen. So we subscribe first. This is an observable property, so we need to subscribe to read the values. So subscribe it. Once it is subscribed, we are going to assign these values read from this product into the form, assigning that to the reactive form. It will automatically displayed in the UI. This is all what we need to do to display a product. So let's see how this looks like. So clicking on edit, nothing is happening. CRUD.edit is not a function. Edit product is not a function. So we need to go to view components, edit product and iProduct. Define like this. Yep, we got the edit product navigated and we got the product opened in the edit mode. And now when we save this function add product component, whenever we save a product we need to check whether the product is having an ID or not. So if the product is having an ID, ideally that should be an update, otherwise it should be a save. So let's see how that can be managed. So here always we are reading an ID property. Any new product that is being added will not have the ID property, ID value. So that we can differentiate and update and save. So for that we will do one thing. We will replace this add functionality with the update functionality. Okay, our product service does not have an update functionality, so I need to define a new service method within the product. So product service should take update product product type, and it would return void. For now I'm returning void. From here you can return any status or anything however you need. So all we are going to do is get the index of the product being updated, and this dot products dot index we assign the new product, product being passed, so that the existing product will be replaced with the new values. So now we are checking based on ID, so the update should work. So now save these functions, add component. If there is a new value, existing value, so we'll come from the beginning. So we will go to the list first and edit the taste bud mango pickle and take it to edit mode. I am updating this code as updated and hit on save. You can see the product being updated. So now here we had one functionality missing, is we are not able to update an existing a new product that been added. Functionality, we need to check if add new product, that we need to check. Something went wrong with that code. So let's put a debugger here. This is shows as empty, causing the failure here. Let's correct that. So when we add a new product, all we need to do is we need to check the new ID to be generated. So I am updating the logic within the product service whenever we add a new product. So before we push that product into the list, I'm assigning this dot product dot ID product dot ID equal to this dot products dot count length plus 1. So let's see how is it behaving. So let's add a new product, test 1, test 1, unit, category, sales rate 100, 120. Save, we got the product added. Let's view this, edit this, update it, save it. So we got it updated. So that's all about this tutorial. In this we have done pretty much all the CRUD operations with the products, and we are listing and we are adding new product, we are able to view an existing product, edit, and we can update it, and we can delete the products. So we can delete the products. So here we have not consumed a RESTful service or database. Instead, we have managed everything within the Angular service. Next tutorial, we will integrate the same application with the database using RESTful services. And thanks for watching.